the All Sorts of Sports podcast. Here with the Lebanon Daily News is Andrew Callahan, Pat Huggins, and John Buffone. Here to kick off our first ever podcast talking about, of course, what else? All sorts of sports. To lead off, we're going to each provide certain tidbits about what we've been up to over the past week and then look ahead to high school football starting Friday, Penn State on Saturday, and then some more sports to be on to wrap up our first podcast here. So, Pat, I know you were visiting with Palmyra Field Hockey, coming off of their first ever Co-State Championship. I think the first ever Co-State Championship with Penn Manor a year ago. Is that they split before?
I think there was one other Co-State Championship, but that was the most recent by far, and certainly.
So how were things in practice the other day?
I was there to do a story on the defense, and they're looking good. I mean, they have very high expectations. I was there doing a story on the defense. It's kind of an underrated part of their team,
right?
But they are, they lost, of course, Katie Dombrowski, the leader of their team, the midfielder, now playing at Penn State. But they have a lot of kids back, and they're really looking for big things this year. So I know they're ready to get going. Friday they start hosting Hempfield, and be interesting to see what they can do this year. And again, big goals.
Hempfield, the team you didn't see, John, because we were up at the Little League World Series. Your first visit, I used to go as a kid, loved it, still love covering it here now as an adult. What were your first impressions of Williamsport?
Well, yeah, like you said, it was a different experience for me because you had been there before. I had not. I've heard about the whole Williamsport mystique, and I was excited to finally have an opportunity to go and check it out. And it lived up to its billing. It wasn't overhyped whatsoever.
What did you hear about the mystique? I've never put it that way.
Well, because when I was in college, I had a roommate who lived in Williamsport. That was his hometown. He always talked about how the town doubles in size, and
right.
the experience of going to the field, and the fact that it's to get in is free, and the people sliding down the hills on the cardboard, and then and it's a whole experience, and it just kind of brings out what sports are about, because
right.
There's no one playing for money in there, and it's just a lot more emotion driven. But when I got there, I was extremely impressed with the whole experience, because the place was filled. And not to mention we were there for
all-time crowd,
an all-time record for attendance in there. Over 45,000 people were there. The hill was packed in the sea of red. People supporting Redland, and then to be in the press box and watch it all unfold, because we watched the international game before that,
yep.
and then we watched Redland walk it off in the U.S. Championship. It was just unbelievable. If you haven't ever been there, you got to put it on your bucket list, because it's something that you need to experience at least once.
Pat, have you gone?
I have not gone.
You're going next summer.
Yeah.
We're making plans.
Redland will be back, right?
You should probably book a hotel now that we're speaking about this, because they fill up fast. Though I got to chat on Sunday before the whole World Championship game. They had folks from Virginia down in Charlottesville, which I know is at least 4 or 5 hour drive, probably a little bit more. They said they got a hotel the night before. They had to call because the room was canceled. And they had a son it was his birthday. He plays high school ball. He just always wanted to go. They made it out. We're at the bottom of the hill at 6 in the morning.
Yeah.
Game started at 3 on Sunday. But they just wanted to come out, and they had been on Saturday too, but just wanted to be there for the weekend and loved it. So I'm telling you, like, no matter where you're from.
Right. The thing that amazed me about that, not being there, but hearing about the crowds and everything, and you're talking 40,000 people at these games, double what's at some major league games that week and night, and
And you know what's funny?
I think that really drove it home for me how much of a spectacle. And of course, Redland being there increased those crowds and the interest, but still, that's a phenomenal turnout.
And one last note on Little League World Series before we move ahead to high school football. I looked up when they announced it, and John and I were covering Saturday's game, 45,716. If that was an average attendance at the World Series, which of course it's not, the reason they mentioned it's an all-time mark, if you compared that as an average mark there to what it would be in the major leagues, it would be the second highest average attendance in the major leagues, just behind the Dodgers, and I think it was a difference maybe 1,000 or 2,000.
Yeah.
So they really had a crowd that would have fit in the biggest of ballparks in the major leagues, and it was a real major performance. And every time I got to see Redland,
it's a much more family environment
than
some of the major league stadiums you might go to, if you can believe that. But it was. It's a great, if you have a family or it's a great place to take them, because they get the full experience without having to worry about any of the other stuff.
No, not that guy who's had a couple more Coors than he probably should have sitting behind you throughout the entire game, and
just keeps yelling at the same guy over and over again. He's not even on the field.
Yeah, no, it's a great experience. If you haven't gone, you should definitely go. And of course, you've heard by now it's an outstanding run by Redland. And now that the calendar has turned to September, eyes turn from baseball to football. So we've already broken this down on the Game Time PA TV show, which we just filmed here a little earlier, so you can catch our predictions on Thursday out in print. see what we had to say on TV coming up later. But for now, one game we're looking forward to most this week, and then I guess we'll go with that upset pick. I'll start out for me, not a native of Central Pennsylvania. I'm really looking forward to the Cedar Bowl. Pat, you and I will be covering that, and part of it is just the nature of rivalry. I mean, people always say you can throw expectations out the window, anything can happen. I think that's going to unfold, being able to visit with both teams here before it goes down on Friday. And the nice part is, as much as, for me, no matter where you're from, like you hate your rival, you can grow up rooting against them, you still need them. Like, that's the beauty of it. Like, you have to respect them at some other level, or else there is no rivalry. Beating them is not a big deal. But it's always a big deal to start the season with Lebanon and Cedar Crest. I think it's going to be a great game. And that's actually, coincidentally, my upset pick. I'm going to go with Lebanon over Cedar Crest, who right now in the Game Time PA Gridiron Challenge, Cedar Crest is being picked at a 94% clip. So is that what you're looking forward to most this weekend? You've obviously been around the block here.
Yeah, it's really an event, the game. I mean, it's a big deal to the community, and if you haven't lived in the community, it's a little hard to get a sense for that until you've actually been to a Cedar Bowl game. And and as you mentioned, there's a lot of mutual respect. I mean, obviously they want to beat each other's brains in, but as you said, the rivals kind of need each other too to make that happen, and there is a lot of respect on both sides. So, it's been the first game of the season for forever.
Yep.
And, I mean, not always, but for a long time now, and it's always kind of what starts it all off in football season, and that's the game everybody looks at.
How about your upset pick?
I was leaning a little bit for, I guess it's a little bit of an upset pick, Palmyra over East Pennsboro.
Oh, okay.
I think East Pennsboro is always tough, but I think Palmyra's got some things going for it this year. Two good running backs back in Alon Rhett and Carl Rigo, and I think they could do some damage this year. So let's put them on the spot week one. We'll see what happens.
How about Lancaster, John? What do we got going down there?
There's a lot of good storylines going on in Lancaster. The first and foremost would be Lampeter Strasburg at Hempfield. Two great storylines for both teams. Of course, one for LS would be the return of Colin Bereshank, the quarterback there, who had brain surgery in the spring. Didn't know if he would ever play sports again, and got cleared for full contact not too long ago. And now he's going to be leading the Pioneers back on the field against Hempfield. Hempfield, a more recent story, starting defensive lineman Nate Trimble offered his starting spot to sophomore Evan Pritchard, whose father passed away late last week. Said that he waited for him. I have the article is on GameTimePA.com if you haven't read it yet. He went to Pritchard after practice and said that he wanted him to take his starting spot. And now Pritchard is the punter, but don't let that fool you. He's 6'2", 205 pounds. So he has a lineman body. It's not like they're throwing somebody out there incapable of it. And talking to Trimble, he said that Pritchard's going to be a great player in the future. He's being primed to be a big player on the Black Knights roster at some point. So this is just a great gesture by, it's just a man move. That's all I got to put it. It was understanding the situation. And that's what sports do, especially in the high school level. You have that support system that when something goes wrong, you have that that array of brothers that can come to you and help you get through things. And these guys, they go through 2 days together. They go through the heat together. They beat the living snot out of each other during these practices, and that forms a bond that it's hard to find anywhere else. And a great example of that was what happened in Hempfield whenever Trimble offered his.
And a guy like
spot.
Trimble, senior, well respected, doesn't owe anything to any sophomore.
No,
and to be able to offer that, you've got a limited amount of snaps before your career is done. And now he is cutting off a chunk of those snaps and handing them over. As you said, it's a great gesture. And it's also going to be a great game when you boil down to it.
Oh, absolutely.
Trimble, speaking of which, ended the game last year with a sack of Shank.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of things coming full circle because Trimble had the game-ending sack that LS was threatening to score. The final score was 38-35. LS coach John Mannion wasn't even thinking about a field goal to tie. He wanted to go in and win the game. And then as time expiring, Trimble comes in and sacks Shank. So it's going to be a great game, and with all the emotion going on for both teams, because they're going to be emotionally charged on both sides. So I'm going to be covering that game. I can't wait to see what happens there.
Now, despite all the buildup for Friday, which has been weeks and months now, especially for us, Friday is going to end. The games are going to conclude, and Saturday is going to come, which for most is the mark of the start of the college football season. Folks around here, of course, know Temple and Penn State is going to go down in Philly at Lincoln Financial Field, middle of the afternoon. Pat, your thoughts about Penn State? forget Temple for a second, but their entire season, higher expectations in year 2 under Franklin. Christian Hackenberg bouncing back, beginning with that huge game against Boston College in their bowl game.
Yeah.
What comes to mind first when you say Penn State this year?
Well, I think if you watched them at all last year, they have to protect Hackenberg better than they did last year. I mean, I thought, as talented as he is, I think he regressed to some degree last year because he simply didn't have time to throw.
Yeah.
And I think it really played, you'd have to ask him, but I think it played with his head a lot for a while. And again, I thought as a freshman he looked like a senior. He looked like NFL ready under Bill O'Brien right off the bat.
Yeah.
Last year was tough, so I think if Penn State can protect him this year the way they need to, you're looking at a lot better season because I think he's shown already that if he has time to throw, he can do the job.
Now let me say this, I look at this season for Penn State as you've got games, 10 of which you can win. And it's not going to be easy, but you could say, they put things together. They brought a lot back. Hackenberg, of course, is a big part of that equation. You can win. The two that stand out, of course, are Ohio State and Michigan State. Both are on the road this year. The biggest difference for me, if you're a Penn State supporter, is if they take one of those two. Even if you finish, say, 8-5 after your bowl game, do you think, let's say, Hackenberg gets protected, they can knock off either one of those two teams?
I'll be honest with you, I don't think they're at that point yet. I don't think they're ready for that.
Yeah.
Not that it can't happen, but I think they would have to play close to a perfect game to beat either of those two. I think.
Yeah.
It's probably not what Penn State people want to hear. I don't see that. I don't see that yet. But I think that they can have a much better year this year than they did last year.
For sure.
Especially if they protect Hackenberg.
What are your first thoughts?
That's the key thing what Pat just said. If they can protect him, I mean, you can have the most talented quarterback in the world, and it doesn't mean anything if he's on his back half the game. We've seen it with a whole bunch of prospects and NFL players. Even you look at David Carr, who got drafted number 1 by the Houston Texans, but he spent half his career picking himself off the dirt. So I mean. You can have all the talent in the world, but if you just are running for your life half the time, mechanics go out the window, especially at the college level. Your reads are going out the window. You're just trying not to get hit every play. He has all the ability in the world. You said that he regressed last year, and I agree. And I think that probably hindered his progression a little bit. And that's not on him. That's not on him at all.
The nice part, though, was being able to end on a nice note against Boston College. Outstanding performance, reminiscent of his freshman year when he was breaking all those records. And against a defense, which most folks might not know, but Don Brown, who used to coach down in Maryland, and actually a school that I went to, graduated from UConn, they bring as many blitzes from as many different areas as you'll see. The only other quarterback to really shred Boston College a year ago, which is not to say that they're talented everywhere, but was Jameis Winston. And they threw the entire kitchen sink at him. They did it with Hackenberg. He was able to decipher it. Now, we'll see how that comes into this season. But I'll pose the same question to you, John, as I did to Pat. Real quick, can they knock off either the Buckeyes or the Spartans on the road?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I'd like to, give you a build-up of why there's a chance and why I just think it's not so much that, Penn State's going to be bad. I just think those teams are so much far and beyond Penn State at this point. All right,
well, I would agree. Now, there was a question closer to your heart regarding the Penn State season, which I know we were talking about earlier, and a couple colleagues of ours down in Hanover wrote some columns on. As an outsider, I don't see Penn State's having a rival. I've been following the team for now the last few years and come to know it, and I'll have post-game breakdown of every one of their games for our paper. But I don't see them as having a rival. They're going to play Pitt next year, which I think is great. But before that Pitt game rolls around next fall, will Penn State have a rival? And most people point to Maryland. Where do you stand on that?
I don't, because I think that there's too much one direction, for lack of a better term. I didn't mean to reference a boy band or anything. But
pretty sure I've seen them on iTunes a couple times. It's okay, John. No shame. And
everybody has a guilty pleasure. But,
all right, it's out.
But
it's out there.
I think there's too much one site here, because Penn State at one point just wanted to be rivals with Ohio State. They saw Ohio State as the biggest game of the year. Meanwhile, Ohio State's like, not really. We have the Michigan game at the end of the year. I think Maryland would love to be rivals with Penn State because of the closeness of it. And now they're in the same conference.
And they beat them last year.
Yeah, and they beat them. But Penn State's like, nah, they're not really our rival. It's Maryland. They're not up to snuff to be our rival. But you see the shared hatred. The only one that could possibly be a rival is the shared hatred between Pitt and Penn State. And me coming from Pittsburgh know how much Pitt people hate Penn State because they think that they're like all of a sudden the little brother in the state. No one thinks about Pitt. No, and Penn State, big deal, the big aura of Happy Valley. Meanwhile, Pitt feels like they get no respect, and I have no connection to either one of the schools, so I'm not going either way here. But there is Penn State also I think has a superiority complex to Pitt as well because they do believe that they're better than Pitt and everything, regardless of records in basketball, and apparently basketball doesn't count in Central PA as far as
Well, coming from this UConn guy, basketball counts a lot.
I agree.
But so you don't think there's going to be a rival with Maryland? I would agree, and I think Penn State people, as you said, are going to point to the history. Mm-hmm. Maryland people are going to say, well, what really matters is what happened in recent history, and that was them coming into Beaver Stadium and leaving with a win. Do you think they're going to have a rival outside of Pitt before the year ends? Because Penn State's going to go down to Maryland. It's not going to be in College Park, but it'll be in Baltimore this year, and we'll see how things go there, which I imagine would be kind of chippy.
Yeah, I don't think they'll have a rivalry develop this year, but I will say that I think the Maryland game will be very interesting this year based on what happened last year with the handshake incident.
Yeah.
There's definitely a little fuel to the fire there now, but that is not yet a full-fledged rivalry. It may become one, but it's not yet.
To Maryland, that might be their biggest game of the year. Yeah. For Penn State, it's like, well, we're at Ohio State. We're looking forward to that game. Yeah. So I don't know if you can have a rival with someone that doesn't want to be your rival. You mean you can't say that you're taking a girl to the dance if she says no to you 5 times, and you say, well, I'm still taking her. So I mean, some people will call it a rivalry, but it's not.
We're not digging up any old sad memories there, are we, John?
You know what? This is a great way for me to vent vicariously through sports, and I'm taking full advantage of it.
Prom was almost more than a decade ago now, so we can let go of some of these feelings.
I'm not over it. You broke my heart.
Moving forward, we'll head into from Saturday into Sunday. The NFL doesn't kick off this upcoming Sunday, but we all know it's going to roll around soon enough. And for Steeler fans, the season starts next Thursday. They're going to open in New England against Super Bowl champion Patriots. But we, of course, know there's a split in Lebanon area, Steelers versus Eagles fans. Mm-hmm. So let's go with this question. Who is going to have the better season come win-loss record, keeping these things in mind? Of course, the Eagles had a total makeover from a year ago, highlighted by Sam Bradford now at quarterback, DeMarco Murray in the backfield. The Steelers are dealing with injuries already to Marquise Pouncey at center. Le'Veon Bell is going to be out for the first couple of games, and now Martavis Bryant will join him on the sidelines for the first 4 due to his substance abuse suspension. All that in mind, who has a better record at the end of the year, starting with John?
This is a hard question because I'm not fully bought into the Chip Kelly system, and once again, I'm not a Steeler fan. I'm not an Eagles fan, so it's completely
from Pittsburgh, but
not a Steeler fan. I do not necessarily buy into what Chip Kelly is doing. That being said, I also watched the Pittsburgh defense get shredded by Tyrod Taylor, E.J. Manuel, and Matt Castle in the 3rd preseason game, where a lot of the starters played for a significant amount of time, and not to mention that Le'Veon Bell will be gone for those games. Right. Martavis Bryant will be gone. They have lost Pouncey for potentially the season. The Steelers' offense is going to put up a lot of points. So is Philadelphia's. So to me, it comes down to, I guess, your division and what your defense is going to do. I can see that I'm gonna say Pittsburgh just because I don't have as much confidence in their division. Whereas the Eagles have the Cowboys, they have the Giants, and whatever's left in Washington.
I like that division point, but I'll bring up this point, which I love when anyone talks about preseason football. The only team to go 0-16 in NFL history was, of course, the 2007 Lions, who went 4-0 in the preseason. But I know where you're coming from. I'm gonna go with the Eagles because I believe in the Chip Kelly system, or whatever you want to call it. It's such an overrated term in terms of his offense. I mean, it's the simplest in the NFL, but the pace at which they go and the way they utilize their speed is different. But I believe in them, and I don't believe in the Washington Redskins, who have already made a bigger mess than any infant has at dinner time. So they are just a dysfunctional franchise you'll find. I think they're going to go at the very least 10-6, and that's going to be enough to get them in for a wild card berth, if not the division, because the NFC East could beat themselves up to the point where the winner might be 9-7. Now, we've only got a little bit of time left, but the NFC East is close to your heart, Pat, with a Cowboy fan.
Yes.
So we'll make that open on the table, but who has a better year when it's all said and done at the end of December, Eagles or Steelers?
I still think it's the Eagles, and I have some questions about some of the moves they made as well, how that's all going to fit together with Chip Kelly, but I think the Steelers have too many question marks right now and too many guys. Mm-hmm. Losing Bryant for 4 games is going to hurt. And
their secondary might be the worst in the NFL.
Yeah, defense is a question. So I would lean toward the Eagles.
You ever watch a Bears game?
So now we know where John's coming from with the Chicago roots.
Just throwing that out there.
Okay.
We will contend for the worst secondary in the NFL this year.
We'll see. And the Steelers also have to contend with the Browns and the Bengals and the Ravens, who last year, if you don't forget, the Browns went 7-9. For all the stuff that's gone on relative to their offense, quarterback situation, they had an okay team a year ago, which has been hard to say around parts of Cleveland for a long time. So on that NFL note, we will wrap things up here. For Pat Huggins and John Buffone, I'm Andrew Callahan of the Lebanon Daily News, saying so long from the All Sorts of Sports podcast. We hope to see you next week.